We will diagnose 40,000 men this year. That's an awful lot of men.
Men with prostate cancer who have hormone therapy are more likely to have cardiovascular risk factors.
Around 30% will actually succumb to a heart attack or a stroke.
That's the real fear, is that this risk goes unnoticed.
And we know there's a lot that they can do to improve their outlook.
And that is the whole point of our study, is to intervene and reverse these risk factors.
In the UK, 40,000 men are diagnosed each year with prostate cancer.
It's a very prevalent disease, but what we see is that about 250,000 men now survive.
Our treatments have got so much better. Life expectancy of 18 months has now moved up to 7 out of 10 men living 10 years or more.
So it's a disease that is now not an acute illness, it's a chronic illness. Most probably you'll die of something else, not necessarily the prostate cancer.
With hormone therapy, we know that it's a very effective way of managing prostate cancer, because prostate cancer cells simply cannot or will not grow if there's no testosterone around. For men who have had potentially curative treatment, if you give hormone therapy for 2 or 3 years, you make it much more likely you're going to get a cure.
We're now moving up to 80% survival, which means that most people are going to have at least 10 years plus. And this is why exercise and lifestyle changes are becoming important, because previously people didn't survive. This wasn't even on the agenda.
Part of the miraculous success in the treatment of prostate cancer is down to modern treatments, including hormone therapy.
Although it's really, really good at sorting out the cancer, improves cure massively, what it does do is actually change the way they metabolise fats, and that can then increase their risks for heart health and diabetes.
This is happening to all of us as we age, to variable extents. Some people are more vulnerable to the development of these changes, but it does happen as we get older. So it is a natural phenomenon that increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. And the loss of muscle and the accumulation of body fat just accelerates the likelihood of dying from cardiovascular disease. But these drugs accelerate that process.
The men find that their stomachs get bigger. We talk about it as the sort of the tyre of prostate cancer. Very quickly you develop this sort of what I would call a muffin roll, this little tummy here. And then you begin to lose muscle mass as well. So things like the legs become thinner, your strength is not so good. And also people feel very fatigued. And it's subtle. But what happens is that the less you do, the less you're actually repairing that damage, and over time it continues to deteriorate.
Around 30% will actually succumb to a heart attack or a stroke. So that's a large number of men that we could potentially save by giving them adequate cardiovascular risk management.
So what changes do men need to make to mitigate these risks?
We don't need radical changes. This is about lifestyle change. This is not a diet or an exercise program. This is about small changes you make in your life that actually you'll keep, that will live with you. This is about changing what you do for really forever.
Not only men, but also their partners, families start eating more healthy, but also their physical activity levels increase and stay high.
Actually, this is one way that you can do something to help yourself that isn't at the mercy of all of us healthcare professionals.
It's not about running marathons, you know, suddenly getting somebody to be an elite athlete. This is really about small changes, walking more, getting your fitness up over a period of time, not expecting someone to be, you know, hugely fit within a week. This is really about small incremental changes.
These changes are in two main areas. The first is exercise.
Even if men have not had hormone therapy, we know from big studies in the States that if a man with prostate cancer, even if they've had surgery, if they increase their physical activity, it improves their survival from their disease.
For men who exercise for an hour a day, reduces their risk of dying by a third. If they do 3 hours exercise a week, it reduces their risk of a recurrence by about half, 50%, and reduces their risk of having a heart attack or a stroke by 2/3. So they really get two benefits. One is a less likelihood of recurrence. If they get a recurrence, it'll be less aggressive, and they reduce their risk of cardiovascular disease, all by doing something which they should be able to do themselves.
These lifestyle changes don't have to be large.
We're not asking men with prostate cancer to become athletes, definitely not. By making a few simple changes to their life, you know, with accessible forms of exercise, they can make a big difference.
You don't necessarily have to go to the gym 3 times a week. If you walk to the shops every couple of days, if you take the stairs instead of the elevator, and those little things, that's what we try to instill in people, and those are the things that they can keep doing for the rest of their lives.
So even things like brisk walking can have a big impact on body composition, lower limb strength, skeletal muscle mass, psychological well-being. So these are small changes, not big changes, but they can reap big rewards.
If you don't want to get up and run, don't run. But if you like swimming, swim. Or tennis. We do whack-a-ball. We don't play tennis. We go to a gym and we just whack a ball against the wall, like we did when we were kids. It's great fun, but it's exercise. Find out what you like to do and make it fun. If you run around the park on your own, it's easier to stay at home and stay in bed. If you're going with a club, you've got your friends, you've got other people who you don't want to let down. It's a camaraderie thing.
Once men get the bug for exercise, we've had patients who've taken out gym memberships and that type of thing, you know, from never being physically active. So once they get the confidence to exercise, you know, the world really is their oyster.
I used to be on antidepressants because of the side effects of the hormone therapy, because I was crying and weeping all over the place. But, you know, the running itself is a really good antidepressant. And it gets you out of the house, it gets you in the fresh air, and you can't beat it. You don't have to be a speed runner. And God knows I'm not, I'm telling you.
He's been known to be grumpy. He's been known to have a bit of a moan. And gradually, as he's got fitter, as he's done mentally, he's felt better. He's not as grumpy. He feels better about himself. It's a good feeling factor. It's a good feeling. The brain is telling him that everything's all right now. So, and that's a massive boost.
The second area men need to look at is what and when they eat.
We know that the very best evidence for reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease comes from not altering intake of one particular nutrient. It's got to come from a combination of factors.
The key is something called the Mediterranean diet.
The Mediterranean diet for many years has been associated with a lower rate of cardiovascular disease, particularly in the southern Mediterranean. And this is a real phenomenon that we've been studying for many years now. And we attribute this to a combination of foods in their diet that has become known as this Mediterranean diet.
What it is lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and pulses, which are beans and lentils and chickpeas. So the diet is predominantly from vegetable sources. It also encourages people to limit red meat and use much more fish and oily fish, and swapping butter for olive oil. There's a big use of olive oil.
So it's quite a unique combination of food and food components that are active in preventing cardiovascular disease.
We're using it with prostate cancer because it's very much a lifestyle. It's a dietary pattern rather than a diet. So that you can adopt healthy eating principles that have been shown to make a big difference with losing weight and reducing your risk of heart disease.
So we really have definitive proof now that the Mediterranean diet works, and we don't have that for many other dietary patterns. So that's one of the reasons why we want to use the Mediterranean diet as the basis for our dietary intervention.
The diet advice given will differ depending on the individual's requirements.
Some people lose muscle during treatment, and so actually the diet is slightly different for people who lose muscle during treatment because they need more protein, and by that we need more protein to build muscle. When we've lost muscle and end up with thinner arms and legs, we need to exercise, but the exercise isn't any good unless we've got plenty of protein foods in our diet, and by protein I'm talking about lean meats, chicken, fish, oily fish, eggs, pulses, beans, lentils, chickpeas, all of those foods that the Mediterranean diet is so rich in, which will then rebuild muscle along with the exercise.
There is a relationship between the amount of protein that you eat and the production of protein in your muscles and the production of muscle mass. So that's very important, as is obviously exercising as well, to try and maintain or sustain muscle mass. Ultimately, it's the amount of protein that the patients are eating is critical to them maintaining muscle mass.
Making these alterations is a lifestyle change, and it's not easy.
It doesn't happen overnight. It's not something we would say, here's your diet, this is what you should be eating. It's more about behaviour towards buying food, cooking food, eating food. It's a long-term benefit for the rest of your life. So what we're trying to do is encourage people to make changes to their diets gradually so that they're embedding those changes that become habits.
It's been a gradual effort. You know, I didn't suddenly have a day when I said, right, I am changing my diet from tomorrow. It's just been something I've tried to do in little chunks and gradually improve my diet.
You can do a diet overnight, but actually behaviour takes a good 10 to 12 weeks to actually really embed new habits so that you can take that forward. I think the most difficult thing and the most challenging thing is giving in to temptation. And so it's a diet for the whole family. And if you've got everybody at home doing the same thing, eating healthily, eating all of those lovely vegetable sources, there's less chance of temptation, I suppose.
There's nothing worse than someone coming down, sitting there in front of you eating a cream cake, or saying to you, come on, have another slice of cake, go on. The key thing with having families and friends help you is to actually work with them and get them involved.
My wife now actually makes some crisps for me, where she uses a minimal amount of spray on oil and really thinly cut on a mandolin, and they taste great. So between us, we're kind of improving our diet.
Don't buy things that you shouldn't be eating, don't have them in the house. I often get told that, well, my grandchildren are coming round and so I need to have it in for them. No, you don't. They don't need it either.
You need your friends to be supportive as well. So if they all want to say, let's go down the pub and have a curry, yeah, great occasionally, but you don't want to be doing that too often.
If you go back to high fat, high carb stuff, you actually feel bloated and you don't feel very well. And that sort of says, wow, I don't really like this.
We've all started over the last few years to eat more and more at meal times, and it's now perceived as normal. Plate sizes have changed, I think, probably since the 70s. They've gradually got bigger over the last probably 40 years, but surreptitiously so that we haven't really noticed it. If you've got a big plate, you put more food on it. Whereas if you put that same amount of food on a smaller plate, it looks like you've got an enormous portion. A meat portion should be the size of a deck of cards, or pasta should be the equivalent of 2 hard-boiled eggs. We've got very used to eating a lot more.
The time of day that you eat is quite critical, and it's better to eat earlier in the day, breakfast, eat a large lunch, and then snack in the evening. It's also been associated with more effective weight loss. You've got to consider the length of time it takes to digest the fat and remove it from your circulation. That's going to take 5-6 hours. So you have to consider if you're eating anything later than sort of 7 o'clock at night, you're still going to be going to bed and your blood will effectively still contain a very large amount of fat. You can provide someone with a meal at lunchtime. You can take serial blood samples after that meal and you can measure the levels of blood sugar or blood fat. And what you can demonstrate is that if you eat that meal at midday, you get a very different set of profiles than if you eat that meal late in the evening. Just 20 minutes of brisk walking can affect the efficiency and the rate at which blood fat is removed from your circulation after you've eaten food, which is remarkable. That means if you can incorporate something like walking into your daily lifestyle, you'll maintain lower levels of blood fat and glucose throughout the day. And that has a huge impact on cardiovascular risk.
If people are going to drink, we tend to say, for men, stick to 2 units a day and have a couple of days without any. It's important not to do all of the allowance at the weekend. And after a cancer diagnosis, the recommendations is less than the general population. 2 units of alcohol is not very much. A pint of strong beer now is 2.3 units. So it's actually less than a pint of strong beer per day. It's a small glass of wine. And by small, I mean 125 mils rather than 175 mils, because along with portion sizes of food, measures of wine have also increased.
One of the key factors in the programme is that the advice given is tailored to the men individually.
Most men say, where do I start? You know, yeah, I'm fat. I know I'm fat. I know I'm unfit. Yeah, but I'm not going to go to the gym. I can't run 2 miles. I can't do star jumps and, you know, I'm really not going to go weightlifting. And what we're saying is, actually, you most probably don't need to do that. You only need to make small changes on a personal prescription to make a difference. The rationale behind giving a prescription, a personal prescription, is that we're all different.
You can design a program that is tailored to the specific needs of men. So if men have a lot of body fat, low muscle mass, then you can use aerobic exercise to burn body fat. You can include resistance exercises which will help to maintain or build up skeletal muscle, thereby counteracting potentially the effects of some of the cancer treatments.
So if we have a man who isn't fit, that's our priority. If we get another man who is very weak, we need to focus on his strength. So we'll give him more exercises that actually focus on building up his muscle again.
If they are overweight, they will need some form of energy restriction. So we need to reduce the amount of energy coming from food. At a practical level, that means eating a balanced diet, but eating things in moderation, considering portion size.
You can be thin and still have a lot of metabolic problems, and you really need an individualised plan. So for someone who's lost muscles, they need to have more dietary advice that improves their muscle health.
You will be given guidance on what sort of exercise to do. It won't be too strenuous, it will be appropriate to you. And similarly with diet, it'll be good advice on the foods to eat and the foods to avoid.
If it's individualised, you're going to have much more impact, and it's personalised. It's something really special.
Making these changes is something that will take time and needs commitment.
You can't throw a habit out of the window. You've got to coax it downstairs one step at a time.
You're in it for the long haul, and I think it's important to establish right at the very start that this is for the rest of your life.
I think the thing is not to be too ambitious. What you've got to do is set realistic goals. Think small. Do it every day. Think about it all the time, and then reward yourself. These are small things, small changes, and it's about actually feeling good about yourself.
I always talk to my patients about the 90% rule and saying that you can't do this 100% of the time. If you can, brilliant, But remember the 90% rule, because then if you do eat something or have a day when you've eaten more at a particular meal, then you just get back on track the next day. It's not about, oh well, I've given in, so there's no point in continuing.
I think we're very good and we're very effective at changing our diets and lifestyles in the short term to bring about a very short-term effect. But that's not what's required here. What we need to achieve here is a sustenance, a maintenance of that diet and lifestyle change into months and years in order to gain more years on our life. Now, sustaining that practice does require other people in your lives, and that can be friends, it can be partners, wives, husbands, largely because they're involved in modifying your dietary pattern.
A lot of the men will not be buying the food or cooking the food or preparing the food, and you know, it's a team thing, and it may be the man's problem, but it's a couple's concern.
It isn't something you can do on your own. You know, if I eat in the evening with my wife, we always sit around the table and have a dinner together, and I can't be having, you know, one diet and she on another. So it's really important that your partner is supportive on helping you eat.
These changes will have a big impact on the quality of men's lives.
Benefits from exercise are that you feel a lot better. You know, anyone who is feeling fit, you have that lovely feeling of that you can actually achieve things that you want to do. There's nothing worse than struggling and feeling fatigued and tired, and we know that exercise can improve that. If you can improve your fitness, it improves how you feel.
I think they will notice the health benefits pretty quickly. But also there are a lot of psychological benefits from it as well. It can help sleep patterns and things like that, psychological health status, especially if you're doing it with friends and family.
It's amazing how their life changes once they've got some kind of control of the mental strength, the physical strength. Hang on, it's not all over. I can do something about this.
They will feel lots of benefits from changing their diet to a healthy eating pattern and changing their lifestyle. And the benefits are seen very quickly. You feel much more energized, it reduces fatigue, you sleep better, you cope with stress better. Then there are also the long-term health benefits of reducing risk of diabetes, reducing risk of heart disease, and I think the most powerful benefit is reducing the risk of another cancer.
Psychologically, I'm a different person in a different place now. You know, my PSA dropped to non-detectable. As I say, I'm not diabetic, blood pressure's down, everything's normalising, and my weight's down. It's still a way to go. And I feel in control now of my health as much as I can be.
It reduces symptoms like incontinence. So I see that the men would get benefits quite quickly from this programme.
Erectile dysfunction does happen virtually with all men who have prostate cancer for a variety of reasons, and I didn't escape that. Again, the physical exercise, particularly running, improved that. It covers a lot of things that men with prostate cancer suffer from. Exercise, it hits all the buttons, psychological, physical, you know, and physiological. So go for it.
With the support and guidance of medical professionals, you have the power to make a difference to your quality of life and to that of people around you.
What I want is men to survive well, to feel, yes, I'm doing something myself that's going to really make a difference.
There has to be a point where you say, hang on a minute, I think I need to do something here and take responsibility.
What you do is going to be more important than what I do, so you've got to do this.
Stack the odds in your favour. This is about trying to improve the risk factors. Stack them for you, and only you can do that.
That will reduce your risk of the cancer coming back. It will reduce your risk of maybe getting a new cancer. It will reduce your risk of perhaps having a heart attack or developing diabetes.
So the more you can do to be healthy, stay healthy, the better your quality of life is going to be.
If somebody said to you, okay, here's a pill that would increase your survival by 35%, most people would go, yay, but it's much harder to do these things, possibly yourself.
I'm very positive because I know I've made life-changing decisions with my lifestyle. It is a way of life now for me.
See those benefits and see little changes and see those improvements.
You might say, I'll do the lottery for 6 months, and if I don't win $1 million, I'll stop doing it. Fine. If you're prepared to do that, then do exercise for 6 months and see if it makes a difference. And I guarantee it will. You won't win the lottery necessarily, but you will win life's lottery.